Good morning. I'm enjoying, as always, reading your messages as you arrive. It's just so magical that we can do this from all over the world. Even Kaz bringing some sunshine from the other side of the world in Wellington. And a really deep respect to all of you willing to wake up in the dark in the Northern Hemisphere, coming to the longest night of the year soon here. In this beautiful way, as you begin to settle in and feel each other, feel the Sangha here. The beautiful way we come together in support not of each other's success or role in life or any of the other normal parameters that we might see each other through or even encourage each other towards. But here we have this wonderful collective field of supporting each other and ourselves. Perhaps with this question of how deeply can I love what is here today or in this moment? How deeply can we support each other with loving what is here in this moment? So there's an ease in that reflection and in that support. There's also an invitation that's always available to us. Because you are welcome wherever you are and however you're feeling. You're welcome just as you are, welcoming yourself just as you are. So in this week's theme of welcoming challenging emotions, a reminder then that it's the way in which we relate to emotions that determine whether or not they are detrimental or beneficial. It's not the emotions themselves. It's our relationship with them that determines their resonance and outcome in our lives and in each other's lives. It's the way in which we relate to emotions that determine our response. And so, as with the metaphor I shared on Monday, we are aspiring towards remembering the possibility of the enlightened parent who hears, in this case, today we'll be exploring anger. Anger is a sacred emotion, and so hears the cries of anger of their child in another part of the house and goes to embrace that child with compassion. When we have a distorted, imbalanced, or unhealthy relationship with anger, or with any emotion, in fact, we will tend to either suppress it or embellish it. So suppressing anger is a form of violence in itself. It's a violence towards ourselves that creates a really strong contraction in the body, because anger itself is a very dynamic energy. So to suppress it takes a lot of energy. And it's also a very unstable state. Suppressed anger, because anger is so potent, will very easily tip into reactive and disproportionate expression, often around those that we love the most. Because often with the people we love the most, our heart is most open, our armoring is down. So suppressing anger is both unstable and brittle and violent towards ourselves, and then at time that violence erupts outwardly. And embellishing anger happens when we lose ourselves in the stories of blame or shame. Really investing in those stories of it's my fault, it's your fault, it's their fault. Placing the wrongness, the fault, the blame, the shame somewhere, which actually perpetuates the energy of anger itself. It perpetuates the emotion in the system as we replay the story. Another way that embellishing can arise is when we replay the story either inside ourselves or through the external information we allow ourselves to continually receive. We replay the story of a situation that elicits anger. So again, we're by replaying in the mind, we are recreating the emotion. And in that case, it can feel like we're drowning in the anger. So every beneficial and sacred relationship to an emotion brings forward its sacred expression. And a sacred relationship to an emotion is when we are able to meet it in the body with love. Because every emotion has its expression here in the body. We're often more familiar with an emotion's reaction in the mind, or even action in the world, the way we act out from an emotion in the world. But emotions first are energies in the body. They are physical sensations in the body, and they can be met and embraced here in the body with curiosity, with care, with tenderness, with warmth. So we were exploring yesterday how when we meet anxiety, we can love offers this wide lap for anxiety to begin to rest into. So the way that love shows up is more upekkha, this sense of equanimity, this spaciousness for anxiety to rest. When we meet anger, what I find to be most helpful is this karuna, this expression of compassion. And this is very different to meet anger in our own bodies with compassion. It's very different from bypassing the feeling of anger and wanting prematurely perhaps to feel compassionate towards the person or the situation we're feeling angry about or towards. So there's a subtle but profound difference there. You know, it's easy to not notice where we're using our spiritual practices to actually bypass what we are feeling and unconsciously suppress what we're feeling because we want to jump to what we're imagining to be a more enlightened stage or wanting to be a more enlightened and comfortable stage of being. So wanting to feel compassion in the world rather than feel anger is actually a form of suppressing that anger. So instead, what I'm inviting here is cultivating the willingness and the capacity to feel the anger that we do feel when it's here with compassion, to meet that anger with compassion. And what begins to happen is that through meeting the anger with compassion, we begin to see behind the anger to the hurt that we're feeling behind it. Because there is always hurt behind anger. Its very nature is that it arises in defense of some form of violation. That's why it's sacred. It arises in defense of some form of violation of body, heart, mind, other, this earth. And so when we meet anger inside ourselves first with compassion, we're giving a soft space for whatever it is within us that hurts as well to be present alongside that energy, that fiery energy of anger that's wanting to defend and support that hurt. And so as we do that with ourselves, it also means that over time we come to be able to see the hurt behind the violence in others as well. In the same way that we're, by meeting anger with compassion ourselves, we're seeing the hurt behind that strong, dynamic energy of anger in ourselves that has the potential to tip into violence when it's distorted. In the same way, we begin to see behind anger when it's expressed in others, or even see behind the violence of their actions to the hurt behind it. And that isn't to say that we are no longer able or invited to respond with fierceness at times. So the sacredness of anger's response will always move to prevent further harm to our capacity in any moment. And at the same time, there's that widening willingness and capacity to see the humanity there, to wonder, to inquire into what is it to be you in this moment? What are the conditions that have led to the violence that is arising right now? And is there anything that I can do there? And also ask that we ask the more difficult questions of, in what way am I unconsciously participant in this unfolding? And when there are such painful events unfolding in the world in so many forms of violence towards each other, violence towards the earth itself, the sacred expression of anger is needed more than ever. Its power is needed. It has a capacity it calls us to respond. It has a capacity to really energize a very creative response. And the compassionate lens is needed more than ever. That willingness to really recognize the shared heart that each and every one of us share, the pain that distorts our actions, and the shared responsibility as we move towards healing, as we move towards our potential to live in sacredness. So let's practice together. And as always this week, the heart of a meditation practice remains that in the most simple way, our practice is always to unhook from stories, from the narratives, from the energy in the head that fixates around looping stories or crystallizes around beliefs, to really unhook and soften there, to come into the body, to anchor our attention here, which is what we'll do with the breathing as we always do. And then this week there's also just the invitation, once our attention begins to ground and become more anchored in the body, there's the invitation to feel what it is we're feeling, to really turn towards that, to soften around it, to breathe into it and rest beside it. And so I might be giving some invitations around how to be with anger, but it may not be that anger's here. So the invitations I give apply to whatever it is you're feeling, and perhaps will be useful at another time when there is that strong charge of anger, if it's not here right now. So I really invite you to choose a posture that's most appropriate for you, for your body, for your heart, for your mind. If you're lying down, find a posture where the body can be supported in a way that is the way that it can also, your heart can also feel open, your head supported, the belly can be relaxed. If you're seated, it's the same, as much as upright as possible, where the heart can be open, but the lower body grounded and supported. And you might find today, especially if speaking about anger or if events in your life trigger a sense of anger, that you might want to be standing and even moving. So I will say one thing before we begin our formal practice, one more thing, because this might apply to you as we practice together, that when we've had a history of suppressing anger, as we begin to release it, as with all emotions, there can be quite a backlog, a dammed. It's like we dam the river. So there's a reservoir that really floods the flow of the energy of anger. As we begin to recognize and allow it and liberate it, can feel quite strong. And because anger is a dynamic energy, it wants to move. It really wants to move through the limbs, through the voice, through the hands and the feet, the arms and the legs. So it can be helpful to allow that, and even, stamping on the ground or punching a pillow or shouting into a pillow. These are all ways that don't bring harm anywhere, but can help move and liberate that anger. So whether lying down or seated or standing, let's begin our practice together. Breathing out through the mouth with a sigh or a sound. And maintaining that space between the back teeth. Softening inside your mouth. Lips slightly parted. Relaxing the root of your tongue wherever you perceive that to be. As if you open up a channel inside your body for your breathing to move, for the energy of your body to move. Lengthening the exhalation as you draw your attention down into the body. Unhooking your attention from the thoughts or stories. Choosing to place your attention gently on the sensations of breathing in the body. Curious and caring. As if you're meeting a beloved friend. Your breathing body a refuge for you to come home to again and again and again. The sensations of breathing, a soft, loving anchor of attention. within your breathing body. Each time you notice that your attention has wandered, celebrate the noticing. Unhook. And as you return your attention to your breathing, relax your jaw, your tongue and your lips. Relax your belly. Relax wherever you feel tension. Unhook. Relax. And lovingly return your attention to the sensations of breathing in your body. And as your attention begins to land in the body, and as you begin to relax the body, notice what you're feeling. Notice what you're feeling as sensations in the body. And if there's anger here, become curious as to how anger feels in the body. Breathe into the places of contraction, the tension in the diaphragm or the belly. Breathe into and around the fizzing, the tingling, the energy. Honor the sacredness of this energy. Recognize and allow it. Unhook from the story. Breathe into the body. And embrace this feeling with compassion. With tenderness, as if inwardly turning towards, softening around, and just resting beside this energy of anger. It's okay to be here. Acknowledging the hurt that it's defending. And yet unhooking again and again from the stories that come up. So that the energy itself can be liberated in the body. Breathed into with compassion. If at any time you experience this energy of anger as really heated in your system, as I said earlier, allow yourself to move, to shake, to stamp, to punch, to shout if that's appropriate. We're learning to no longer be afraid of anger as it exists and arises in the body. We've seen and witnessed and experienced so many distorted expressions of anger. But we're learning to honor and liberate its energy in the body. Neither expressing it through the narratives of violence or the actions of violence, nor suppressing it with an inner violence. Honoring it, breathing into it, liberating it, and holding it with such compassion. Because violation hurts, and violation should be responded to with sacredness. Unhooking from story, relaxing the face, releasing the tongue and the jaw and the lips. Coming back into the body, to the breathing. So that your breathing body becomes an open channel for the energy of anger to freely release. Held with compassion. It's okay to feel this way. Everything and anything that we feel can be met here in the body with love. so that we can respond to it from love. Where the mind tends to react to anger by utilizing its energy to vengeance, wanting others to hurt in the way that we're hurting. The heart responds to anger with compassion, utilizing its energy to find resolution, to listen, to include, to be willing to not know the answer. The heart moves with grace, sometimes fierce grace, sometimes gentle. This is a poem called When I Walked with the Moon. Late last night, when I walked with the moon, she showed me the radiance of her feminine face, unashamed, uninhibited grace. I felt my lineage behind me, each showing me why they'd needed to hide, and the work they'd done to reveal a new crescent of light. Like the phases of the moon laying patient foundations, each of us peeling away what is ours to release, so we can stand for what is true. I asked the moon, please take from me what I no longer need, and with silvery fingers she plucked a cloak of vengeance I hadn't even known was there. That's not what I meant, I protested. They've done wrong, they hurt us and are blind to the truth. But she simply smiled, a brilliant smile of liquid light, and showed me how heavy and dark those thoughts rest on my shoulders. How they keep me entangled in stories that were only ever here to help me hide for the times I had needed to hide. You're ready to shine, they whispered behind me like ripples through time. We're right here behind you, you stand for us all. So I let slip that cloak of vengeance, just as the moon forgives her own darkness as she returns each month to wholeness. The power of her liquid light, shining for what is true, with unashamed, uninhibited grace. And so friends, as usual, this is some time now for questions if you have any. And some people have already put in the chat a question. You can put capital letters with the word question. A reminder for your ongoing support of Dana, which is not only so greatly appreciated, but so essential to maintain the flow of reciprocity, to keep Sangha alive, to support me. All my work is done through Dana. So appreciations there. A question from Caroline. Let me just post the link for Dana first. There we go. Question from Caroline. The permission to move and yell into a cushion was incredibly helpful. I didn't realize just how angry I was. But I don't really understand the unhook from the stories, and that the stories seem to hook me. I get feeling the bodily feelings, but they seem genuinely and closely connected to the reasons for them, which is what are being called the stories. Yeah, it's a subtle relationship, and especially when there's been suppressed anger, and I completely relate to that surprise in discovering like how much anger there is in the system. I suppressed anger for years and years and years, so it's been quite a, over the years there were periods where I really had to make it quite a central practice to allow it. And especially when there's been suppressed anger, we do need to allow and invite what we're calling the story, the reason for the anger, to come forward first, to bring forward that energy. And when I'm saying unhook from it, it's not, it's the danger can be, or the tendency can be, to then lose ourselves in that story, and then to go into the blame or the shame and the fault and the, so the story, as in the event, the presence, the experience, of course, will continue to be here. And at times it's helpful to even consciously return to it if we feel we've just become numb again. The more important piece is, am I in the body? Am I feeling this in the body? And am I sort of generating energy around the narratives? Am I going into particularly anything around vengeance? And so I was saying that, you know, the tendency to move into blame, shame, to separate ourselves from others, to fixate around fault, to then sort of, that can, you know, vengeance can then go in many directions of what should happen. All of that is what I'm saying unhook from. And it's particularly also in the container of this practice. We're practicing unhooking from thinking coming into the body. But, you know, that's when we're bringing in emotions, that's a more fluid field. So let me know if that's if that answered your question, Caroline. Heidi, sorry that your connection was poor, and yeah, the practice is still to be with the emotions and the reactions that come up to that. That poem, I could, that poem actually I wrote a few years ago. I can perhaps put it onto a Google Doc and share the link to that, because it's not out anywhere else in the world. But thank you, I'm glad it resonated. A question from Ruth. How important is it to connect back to the original anger, possibly feelings from childhood? Or can one do the work equally in the present? To me, they're the same. So where our childhood is alive for us now in the present is where it's relevant to us. So to me, there are ways of working therapeutically, like internal family systems is one where we come into relationship with the many young ones within us. The Ruth who was 1 year old, 3 years old, 7 years old at different times, and they're different. These parts are still alive in us, and so they are very much here in the present. But when we come into relationship, then we'll experience ourselves at that age, and we learn to unblend. So rather than just become that age, become that contracted or frozen one, or we learn to be the enlightened parent in the room again, to really to meet her in a new way, to have that compassionate presence and allow her, which is a part of us, to feel the anger. And so the story, again, in the same way that I was describing with Caroline, the story will be present, the experience, the memories will be present, but to the extent, it's not so much that we have to actively go back and try and find them. They will come forward to the extent that they're still alive and therefore present now in this moment. And just to make it really clear, we need support for this. We need support for this work. When there's trauma, which we all have in different ways, but you know, sometimes it's strong. When there's intense emotions that start to reveal themselves, particularly if they've been suppressed, we need to reach out to others. We need, it could be Dharma mentors, but also therapeutic support. So we need the Sangha, we need the practices, and we need support to be held so that we don't trigger ourselves back into trauma, so we don't lose ourselves back to those contracted, reactive responses to strong energies that at that time we felt were too much for us to bear. So we have to find a way to come into a sacred relationship where, as I think Ram Dass said, whenever we something like whenever we turn towards, whenever we meet what we felt, what we thought was too much to bear, what couldn't bear it dies. So that, or relaxes is maybe a nicer way to put it, so that there's enough safety and support to meet what is here in a new way, in a compassionate way, in a grounded way in the body. Thank you, Lois. Again, that was a poem that I wrote a few years ago, so I'll share it with, I'll find a way of sharing it. And so when it will be, the link to it will be posted on the Dharma Library later today. Thank you. So Caroline sort of answered the question, but I'm still not sure of the degree to which the suggestion is to somehow, not sure how, drop the narrative. Or just drop the vengeance and blame. Yeah, even dropping vengeance and blame can sound, we have to be so careful with language, don't we? That's, it's the maybe the most helpful thing would be to Caroline, to bring to notice where am I present in the body? So just that, make it quite simple, because if you can be present in the body, feeling the sensations, breathing into the sensations, being present with your breathing, softening around, feeling the body, then if there's a narrative that's here at the same time, then that's okay. And beyond that, unless we're together one-on-one, I'm not sure that I can, give more specific guidance or support. Catherine, the question: I have a sense that feelings of shame and judgment of self are self-directed anger. I was wondering about your thoughts on this. Absolutely. So that's where I was mentioning shame and blame together. Judgment is a little bit different. So to me, at least, shame feels like anger turned inwards, in the same way that blame is anger turned outwards, because both shame and blame make a distinction between the action was wrong or harmful, and it becomes instead, I am wrong, or I am a bad person, or you are fundamentally a bad person. You are fundamentally separate from me. I am fundamentally separate from goodness. So yeah, these shame, and that's, Caroline, again, back to what we were discussing. That's another distinction. Whenever there's a story that we create that crystallizes around me or you or them, as if we were separate from the fundamental goodness of the universe, of consciousness, that's certainly a story to just relax around and let go, and relax around and let go. Judgment is similar, but to me its energy comes from the heart, a coldness in the heart, perhaps more hatred, let's say. Hatred turns into judgment, as opposed to anger in Chinese medicine is more from the liver. It's just a slightly different quality, but it's the same, and it's the way it criticizes in an attempt to try and make us safe. And all of these things, even shame, is still sacred. I mean, it's still beloved. It's still trying to do its very best to try and make us okay, make us lovable, keep us safe. So our self-judge, our self-critic, our shame is trying its best to make us okay so that we can be safe and loved in a world from a time where we didn't feel safe to just be who we are, where we didn't feel lovable just as we are. So they are movements that are doing their best to try and keep us safe, but they've outgrown their their benefit, and they're beginning to diminish our capacity to inhabit our aliveness. Don't worry about getting my name wrong. I have that all the time. Natalie, yes, yesterday's recording is available on, if you go to Sangha Dharma Library, Daily Meditations, and you'll find it, both recordings. So the recordings are available immediately, pretty much, on the Sangha Connect, if you've already registered, and then by the evening of the same day, they're usually available in the Dharma Library. So I'm sorry, I've seen we've gone over. Thank you, everybody. And be gentle with yourself today. If anger's been triggered, just be very light and let it move, and hold yourself very compassionately. It can feel uncomfortable, especially when we're not used to feeling it. So keep letting it move and keep trusting that this is okay to be here. That when something moves, it then begins to eventually flow and be at ease. So I wish you an easeful and freely energizing, liberating rest of your day. And I hope to see you tomorrow. We'll be exploring another emotion, perhaps grief tomorrow, but always with love. So the ground, the foundation here is always love. Much love.